Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is episode 36 Sports and Shorts of Sorts. Rennie, Ren City Riquet. This episode's out a little later this week. Dealing with COVID. Not ideal. Don't recommend. Definitely rating 0 stars. But that being said, let's see how the voice holds up today. I start coughing a bit and you dig it. Sign up for my only cough. It's just me out there coughing. Made some good cash during this time. Obviously didn't happen. Just something I thought up while on cough syrup. But been putting that stuff back like a 2000s chopped and screwed wrapper, you know? But I think that's a good time to jump right into our Jersey segment. Let's do it. Episode 36. Starting on the gridiron. Let's go to one of the hardest hitting running backs to ever play the game. With a nickname like the Bus, you better be. I'm talking about Jerome Bettis. We all know him for his time in Pittsburgh. He was drafted 10th overall by the Rams, though, and they'd moved from LA to St. Louis, and the new coach looked to have a pass-heavy offense, not a heavy running back offense. So his production kind of dipped a bit, and he asked to be traded, and he was traded to the Steelers, and Bettis fit right in there. He won comeback player of the year, made the Pro Bowls first year, another 3 Pro Bowls. He was part of the Super Bowl winning team in Super Bowl 40. And they beat the Seattle Seahawks. He's in the Steelers Hall of Honor. And he has his bust in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. One of the biggest running backs you'll ever see. The next NFL mention was an easy one for me, being a Green Bay Packers fan. I'm talking about Leroy Butler, the creator of the Lambeau Leap. Yeah, jumping right in there, look it up. He was the first to do it. One of the most celebrated celebrations in NFL history. Strong safety, spent his entire career as a cheesehead, making 4 Pro Bowls, 4 all first teams, and was on the NFL All Decades team for the 90s. He was part of the Super Bowl 31 team that beat the Patriots, and he's in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, and he was just inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame last year. My last NFL mention is a guy who also played in the defensive secondary. I'm talking about Lawyer Milloy. Milloy spent most of his career as a New England Patriot and was part of the Super Bowl 36 team that beat the St. Louis Rams' greatest show on turf. Milloy would make 4 Pro Bowls with the Patriots and is a member of the Patriots All 90s and 2000s team. He'd also play with the Bills, Falcons, and Seahawks. But going from the gridiron to the diamond, first baseball mention I'll name. He's got a unique name for sure. I'm talking about Gaylord Perry. Perry played 22 seasons in the majors, suiting up for 8 different teams, regarded as one of the most durable pitchers of all time. But he was also known as a guy to doctor baseballs a bit. The spitball was a pitch in his bag, to the point where he even mentioned it in his autobiography, Me and the Spitter. That could have went a few different ways. But regardless of his notoriety, Perry is still a great pitcher, winning 2 Cy Youngs, making 5 All-Star games, and he threw a no-hitter as a member of the San Francisco Giants. His 36 is retired with that franchise, and he's in the Hall of Fame and the Cleveland Franchise Hall of Fame. He's a member of 2 elusive pitching clubs, the 300-win club at 314, sitting 17th on the all-time list, and he's in the 3,000 strikeout club with 3,534, sitting 8th all time. So those are pretty big numbers. I mean, if you're Mr. Durable, your numbers should add up. But unfortunately, Gaylord Perry passed on December 1st, 2022 at 84. Another baseballer I'll mention is Robin Roberts. No, not the reporter, but the MLB pitcher that was way before my time. But we don't use way before my time as an excuse on sports and shorts of sorts. We cover the history. History's important. Never forget it. Roberts spent the majority of his career in Philly. He's 36, is retired in the city of brotherly love. He's also in Philly's Wall of Fame. He's a member of the Baseball Hall of Fame, 7 All-Star games, led the league in wins 4 times, and the league in strikeouts twice. He'd also suit up for the Orioles, Astros, and Cubs, and he passed away in 2010 at the age of 83. Last baseball mention. This one was a surprise because I didn't know who this was before the beginning of last season. But we're talking the Blue Jays' Davis Schneider. You might remember that greasy mustache as he came in super hot. He was the first player in MLB history to collect 9 hits and 2 home runs in his first 3 games. The 9 hits matched a modern MLB record dating back to 1901. It's crazy. With baseball, you got to bring the facts because it's so dated. That's insane numbers there. He's a fan favorite. Looking forward to seeing him in the Blue Jays next year. Going from the diamond to the hardwood, there was only one that came to mind. Number 36, newly acquired by the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm talking Marcus Smart. Till that trade, Smart spent his whole career with the Boston Celtics, and he chose 36 as the 3 honors his brother, who passed away from cancer, and the 6 is the spot the Celtics drafted him in, so 36. He's a great player at Oklahoma State, and as an NBA player, has become one of the best defenders in the league, winning Offensive Player of the Year in 2022, and only 8 perimeter players have won that award, and Smart and Gary Payton are the only point guards to win that award, so that's very impressive. He's made 3 all-defensive teams, 1 all-defensive second team. And his offensive side is picked up as well. Not to the level of his defense, but his defense is unreal. But his offensive game has moved up enough, and it's been a rough go for the Grizzlies this year. But Marcus Smart's been trying to fit in there, make up for John Morant not being there. They have so many injuries on the front line. He's doing what he can there, and that's the 36 I thought of. The only other one, Rasheed Wallace, we highlighted him in 30 for having 30. He only changed to 36 after his brother passed away at 36. So I'll give a shout out to Sheed. He's the man. Good on him for doing that. Going to the hockey rink, the only 36 that came to mind. There weren't a lot. He's not a Hall of Famer or anything, but remember Matthew Barnaby, right? Predominantly known as a fighter during his days, a real shit stirrer that would antagonize you to the point of retaliation. That's what you want. His best season came in 96-97 when he scored 19 goals and 43 points while playing for the Sabres, but he was more known as a goon per se. I know that's not a big word that people like to use, but I think it's appropriate for Barnaby at the time. Wrapping up the Jersey segment, we'll go to the footy world. Don't always pop out there. But a Newcastle local lad, the Geordie, Sean Longstaff, he rocks the 36 for his boyhood club, and he just turned 26 on October 30th. Newcastle's doing exciting things. They had we'll get more into how their weekend went, but yeah, good on Longstaff. Good player, like him. And that's it for the jerseys. Not a lot of 36s bumping out there. And we'll start with the NFL this week, going on a time machine the last Monday where the Chargers beat the Jets. You know what? We'll just leave it at that. Not a lot to talk about in that game. We'll swivel it back to week 10, or pivot, as they like to say in the Chop Kitchen. And on Thursday, we had the Panthers and the Bears. And looking at the schedule, you're like 1-7 taking on a 2-7. It's not really too exciting looking at it. You'd have an exciting play. Smith-Marset would return a 79-yard punt return to put the Panthers ahead. And Bryce Young and Tyson Bagent, man, weren't really lighting up the score. It was field goal fest for the most part. Then you'd have Deontay Foreman running one in from 4 yards to give it a touchdown for the Bears. Sorry, he's a former Panther, and he's sticking it to his old team, making them go with Miles Sanders and being like, what? But anyway, the Bears would hold on, win the game, giving them a much-needed win and helping their chances at that number 1 overall pick because they had traded it to the Panthers, or the Panthers traded their draft pick to the Bears in order to move up to get Bryce Young. So this was a double win for the Bears, which for a team that doesn't get a lot, that's good for them. And then on Sunday, we had another early game because we had a game in Frankfurt, Germany, and this wasn't the one you'd really want to advertise internationally. It wasn't the biggest game we'd like to remember for what they did on the field. I mean, it's always good to have the crowd singing Neil Diamond and John Denver. It's pretty wild how the crowd gets going with that. It's super cool to see, but Mac Jones was missing throws all over the place, and they ended up benching him for Zap Daddy Bailey Zappi. And come in on the last drive, under 2 minutes to go with no timeouts. Can this guy be a hero? I mean, that's a pretty tough ask. He came in and he did not do very well. He threw on a pick, ended the game. Colts take it. And they kept showing Robert Kraft and his just like heartbroken look. It reminded me of The Simpsons when Ralph takes Lisa to the Krusty Big Show, and he tells her he likes her and wants to marry her, and then Lisa says, "No, I never liked you," and like breaks his heart. And Bart's like, "You can pinpoint where his heart breaks." That's Robert Kraft watching that Patriots game. He did not look in a good place for that. That was probably not a very fun plane ride home, and very disappointing for the Patriots. They're 2-8 going into the bye week, the worst start since Bill's first year coaching in 2000 with the Patriots. So I don't know. I don't see Belichick getting fired during the season. That'd be insane. A guy of his resume. But after the year, is he coming back? What's going on with Mac Jones after this bye week? We'll find out who's going to be quarterbacking this team. I say go with Zap Daddy Bailey Zappi just because I like that nickname too. I think I gave him that just now. I'll take it. But we had a crazy game between the Browns and the Ravens. Not ideal for Deshaun Watson to start. For, like, first drive, Kyle Hamilton tips it, catches it, pick six, walk into the end zone, and then like Keaton Mitchell would run one in. That rookie looks amazing for the Ravens, and Cleveland was just kicking field goals, trying to stay into the game, and then Odell Beckham would make a big play. It's like, man, he's coming along lately, and Cleveland would start to wake up a bit. Kareem Hunt would score, only for Gus Edwards to answer it, making it a 2-touchdown game again. But then Elijah Moore would catch a pass from Deshaun Watson to make it a one-score game. And then Lamar Jackson with a lead, throwing a really bad interception. Greg Newsome the second returned it to pay dirt. And suddenly we got a tie game, except hold on, the Cleveland Browns are going to brown, and Hopkins missed the extra point, so the Ravens still had a lead. And then it seemed both teams were trying to out-Browns themselves. The Ravens couldn't kill the game. Watson would get the ball back and make big plays getting in the field goal range, where Hopkins would avenge his XP by hitting a walk-off 40-yard field goal. It's crazy how Cleveland won this game. They had no business winning it. But hey, they did. Now they're half a game behind the Ravens in that tough AFC North. Speaking of the AFC North, there is one team hosting my team, Packers and Steelers. This is always a big matchup. This was always big in our house. My dad was a big Steelers guy, big Packers guy, always trash talk, so he'd have the last laugh in this one. It didn't go the Packers' way so much. The running backs for the Steelers, each of them had a touchdown, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. But then Love would hit Romeo Dobby Dubes and Jaden Reed going to halftime. It looked like it'd be a touchdown fest. Touchdowns were waking up. But we get field goals, and we get bad interceptions by Jordan Love. And then we get the Steelers winning again, even though they're getting out-yarded by the other team. People ask, how do they keep doing this? Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in the NFL. He does this all the time. He's never had a losing record in Pittsburgh. So this guy is the real deal. What he does, oh man, he just gets his team to win. And it's the tough AFC North division I alluded to. So good on them for Pittsburgh. All they do, they're pulling the Al Davis. All they do is win. Even the numbers, they say numbers don't lie. They're kind of lying a bit here because they shouldn't be winning. But anyway, San Francisco and Jacksonville. This was a big matchup of two teams hoping to be the best in their conference. But 49ers were coming in super hungry. They lost 3 in a row before the bye week. They had guys returning from injury. Debo was back. And this looked more like the 49ers team we saw earlier in the season. This defense ate up on Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars offense. They couldn't get a running game going. The 49ers offense was clicking on all levels. Ayuk would get a touchdown pass. George Kittle got a huge bomb from Purdy. Debo Samuel running the sweep. Kyle Juszczyk got a touchdown reception. Everybody was scoring except Christian McCaffrey. So his streak of 17 games with a touchdown has now come to an end. It's a pretty amazing streak. So good on him. After the game, he was like, I guess I suck. I didn't score, trying to make jokes of it. But when this team is healthy, they are a legit Super Bowl contender. This is the team we more expected to see. Didn't expect the Jaguars to come out with such a dud as they did. But I think it was more so the 49ers were pissed and were like, whoever's in our way, you're going to get a beating. And unfortunately for Trevor Lawrence, that was him. The Saints and Vikings, you had the Saints looking for their 3rd in a row. Vikings were looking for their 5th in a row. And after a first quarter of just a field goal apiece, the Pastronaut, Joshua Dobbs, get 3 touchdowns in the second quarter for the Vikings, including a 7-yard touchdown run where he was running all around the field before doing a nice little hurdle into the end zone. Derek Carr was taken out of the game after the team tried to rip his body in half. He took a hit up top to hit down low. Did not look good. Jameis Winston would come in, have some magic, throwing a ridiculous toss in the end zone where he just kind of hucked and chucked it up for Chris Olave, who made a sweet catch. Then A.T. Perry would make a catch, and they touchdown pass, and they'd get a 2-point conversion on both of those scores. Suddenly we have a 1-possession game, and Winston had a chance to bring him back, but he'd get intercepted on his last drive, clinching the 5th in a row for the Vikings. And the Disney magical story for Joshua Dobbs continues. The Pastronaut doing his thing. Texans and Bengals, you had Joe Burrow hitting Trenton Irwin real early. First drive, Burrow shooting the arrow. Things were looking good. C.J. Stroud would hit Tank Dell to tie the game. And the Texans brought a newly promoted kicker, Matt Amendola, who was taking place of Kaimi Fairbairn, who was injured. And he'd give him the lead going into halftime. And He'd keep his field goals going, and they'd get a Devin Singletary touchdown. It's 22-7 for the Texans in the third quarter. Then after a Bengals field goal, Burrow would hit Jamar Chase for a 64-yard touchdown pass. The Bengals would be up again. Excuse me. The rookie sensation Stroud would scamper one in to put the Texans up again. But then Joe Mixon would run in a touchdown, and the Bengals would be down 3. Then with minute 33 left on the clock, McPherson hit the field goal to tie the game at 27. Stroud would move the ball amazingly, like he's done all year for a rookie. It's just crazy. Setting up Amendola for a walk-off 38-yard field goal. Texans get the win over the Bengals. Big win. I think we need to start talking more about D'Amico Ryans for Coach of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year is going to go with Stroud. It's got to. But D'Amico Ryans, man, he's got to be in that talk for Coach of the Year. No one expected this out of Houston. So Houston is not a problem. But Tennessee and the Bucks, Will Levis, he's the starter now for the Tennessee going forward. And this one is not really one he wants to remember. This was all Mayfield and the Bucks. Rashad White caught a short pass, took it 43 yards for a touchdown, and Mike Evans would get a touchdown pass. He could have had 2. He dropped one right in his hands earlier, but easy win for the Bucks, and it keeps them in that mediocre NFC South. Lions and Chargers, what a game. This is probably the game of the week. So shout out to my buddy Kyle, who was at the game. Picked a damn good one to go to, man. The Lions were down. They were converting on fourth down plays all over the field. Like, surprise first-round pick, Jahmyr Gibbs. People are like, why'd they pick him? He's showing why. 2 first-half touchdown runs. David Montgomery returned and ran 75 yards for a touchdown as well. Keenan Allen caught a 29-yard pass and a touchdown, and Austin Eckler would punch in a short one. So going in the halftime, you have a Lions up 24-17. This is kind of the scoring we expected. Jalen Guyton would catch from Herbert, touchdown pass, tie the game up. Then Goff would hit Amon-Ra St. Brown, still one of the best names in the league, to put the Lions up again. But Herbert would answer again to Quentin Johnson. What would the Lions do? Well, Goff would hit tight end 2, Brock White, right down the middle of the field for a 25-yard touchdown pass. Scoring galore everywhere. Keenan Allen would be taken out of the game briefly. He'd come back, get a touchdown, 38-yard touchdown. Game's tied at 38. But the Lions, they'd move the ball down the field again, setting up a 41-yard walk-off field goal by rookie Riley Patterson. A huge win. Lions are 7-2. Showing up, they're Super Bowl contenders. The Chargers continue to do Charger things, put up huge numbers and lose games. They dropped to 4-5. You want to say, how does this happen? But it happens all the time. It's the Los Angeles way. This is what happened with Philip 12 Kids Rivers, or 13. Who knows how many kids he has now, but he couldn't get to the Super Bowl because the Chargers do these things. And now with Herbert, you're getting the repeated thing. Dan Fouts. Like, this happens. The Chargers don't win when you think they should win. But anyway, we'll go to a battle of some birds with some cities that starts with A's. Well, I guess one's a state. But we have the Atlanta Falcons and the Arizona Cardinals, and you had some excitement in the desert. You had Kyler Murray returning from the ACL injury. The former number 1 overall pick was back on the field and bringing some excitement to the desert. And the Falcons got an early lead from a Scotty Miller touchdown when Taylor Heinicke hit him. And it was nice to see Bijan Robinson run one in. It seems he's been on a milk carton lately around Arthur Smith. So good to see him again. And Kyler Murray would scamper one in to make it 14-12 just for half. The Cardinals wouldn't get the 2-pointer, so they'd have a little bit of a deficit. And they'd get it down to the 1 in the second half, bringing Clayton Tune for a quarterback sneak, probably safer than throwing Kyler in there. And previously benched Desmond Ridder had to come into the game for Taylor Heinicke on the Falcons side after Heinicke left with injury. And Ridder would come in and run one into the end zone with 2:33 left in the game, giving the Falcons the lead. It's kind of what Ridder did. You know, he's very inconsistent. Atlanta was almost winning despite him, but he does make winning plays sometimes. So I don't know who's going to be the starter there. But anyway, he gave them the lead with 2:33 left. Kyler Murray made his return a memorable one for people speaking English. And he would get in the field goal range, setting Matt Prater up for another walk-off field goal, giving Arizona their second win of the season. Then here you had a big NFC East battle, the Giants and Cowboys. And was a big story earlier in the week about Tommy DeVito, how he still lives at home with his parents. His mom makes his bed. They probably should have grounded him and not let him go to the stadium because this was ugly. The Giants offense continued to do nothing productive other than some garbage time scores. Lackluster at best. This was all Dallas. They embarrassed the Giants. And while looking out for their fantasy owners, Dak Prescott threw for 404 yards, 4 touchdowns. Still had a pick. He's only got to sneak a pick in there. CeeDee Lamb had 11 catches for 151 and a touchdown and a rushing touchdown. Well, Brandon Cooks, 9 catches, 173 yards and a touchdown. All Brandon Cooks does is just bounce to like every team in the league, it seems, and throws up crazy numbers. Wild. But Cowboys get a nice ego boost. The Giants are just struggling to get through this disappointing season. Yikes. You had the Commanders and the Seahawks. Sam Howell hit Brian Robinson on a short pass that would go 51 yards. A lot of screen passes going deep on Sunday. They'd miss the extra point, but it would be a field goal party the rest of the half. We'd be tied at 9 going into the half. Geno Smith would follow Howell's lead in the first and hit a running back, short pass. Kenneth Walker, 64-yard touchdown. Then Howell would hit Gibson, tie the game up in the fourth. Geno Smith would hit Lockett, put the Seahawks up again. Only for Howell to hit De'Ami Brown, 35 yards out, tie the game with 52 seconds left. But Geno would move the ball down, get them in the field goal range, and Jason Myers would hit a 43-yard, you guessed it, walk-off field goal to give the Seahawks a dramatic win. With that Seahawks walk-off field goal, that made 5 on Sunday for Week 10. The most game-winning scores with no time remaining in a regulation in a single week in NFL history. So that's pretty wild. And then the Sunday nightcap game, if you wanted a game where drives would end in field goals, this one's for you. The only touchdown that would come when Aiden O'Connell would hit Michael Mayer. No, not Michael Myers, not from Wayne's World. Michael Mayer, and for a 7-yard touchdown, put the Raiders ahead. They hit a field goal in the fourth quarter, and the Jets were down 4, moving the ball with over a minute to go, and then Zach Wilson does what he does through a really bad pick. But they'd still have another chance, and then he'd elude Max Crosby, went on the outside, launched it to the end zone with Aaron Rodgers in the presence, Mr. Hail Mary himself. And Garrett Wilson, if you look at this replay, he jumped on over top 3 guys. It looked like he was cloud surfing, and the ball looked like it was going to go in his hands. But his own teammate, tight end Conklin, he blocked it from him. I don't know if he was trying to one-hand it, but he literally took it out. We could have had a magical play, but instead we have another Zach Wilson incompletion and a Jets loss. So give it to the Raiders. They're 2 wins now, 2-0 since Antonio Pierce took the reins. I put a reel out to you other week there asking you guys of the world if he should stay. 92% said yes. So I think you guys are right on that one. And then we had the Monday nighter. Can talk about that one because this podcast is going later than I usually release them, but here we are. And you had Will Lutz missing some extra points early on. The Broncos couldn't seem to get an extra point. The Bills would answer and get their 2-point conversion, equaling a weird 9-8 score before Broncos would get a field goal out of Lutz. And then Josh Allen's like, okay, we can get some scores. Throws a pick right back. Broncos get another field goal for the half by Lutz. So it's 15-8. Just weird score. Broncos had the ball, and you're like, oh, they're going to add to this. Cortland Sutton fumbled the ball. Buffalo would get it back and score, tie the game at 15. And then late in the game, the Broncos were trying to score. Big third down play. Bills bring the house. Wilson just chucks it. It's an underthrown deep ball, most dangerous play for defensive pass interference. They get the call. They move the ball. Javonte Williams gets a nice touchdown from Russ. I mean, Russell Wilson was playing pretty good in this one, despite the scoring not being crazy. But regardless of all that, they couldn't get the extra point again. And Josh Allen would quickly go down the field and run one in where they would get the extra point. Suddenly the Broncos are down 1. It's like, what is going on? They were out yarding the Bills. The Bills had way more turnovers, yet here the Broncos were potentially going to lose this game. But then you had Russ move down the field. They were out of timeouts. So we had to kneel the ball, and the clock was counting down. So they ran out the kicking unit. Like, they got lots of time. They can take their time. Lutz lines up, kicks it, misses. Oh, my God. They're losing this game. Except, wait, there's a flag on the field. And it looks like the Bills look to the CFL and still the old Saskatchewan Roughriders play in the Grey Cup. Too many men on the field for the field goal. So Lutz would get another chance. They'd move it 5 yards closer. He'd knock it through, walk-off field goal, the sixth of the NFL weekend. Craziness all around. What an insane game that was. Oh, man. Oh, from the NFL to the footy world. And we had some top level European footy returning this week. Dortmund hosted Newcastle in their second Group F match. Fulkrug would put German side ahead in the first half, and Newcastle was really pressing in the second, but they just give up a counter, leaving themselves susceptible. Julian Brandt would tuck it in. Dortmund took the win. Shakhtar Donetsk hosted Barcelona, and despite Barcelona having 69% of the possession, a 40th minute goal by Danilo Sican would prove to be the difference. Shakhtar picking up a monumental victory for their club over the Catalan side. That's a big win for them. Lazio would edge out the Dutch champions Feyenoord at home. Porto would shut out Belgian side Antwerp 2-0. Second goal being scored by Portuguese legend Pepe, the 40-year-old still got it. Manchester City easily beat Young Boys 3-0 at home. Atletico Madrid got their revenge and then some. They drew with Celtic last time in Scotland. In Spain, they were not going to let that happen. They crushed Celtic 6-0. Leipzig went into Serbia and beat Red Star Belgrade 3-1. The most anticipated match on the Tuesday was AC Milan of Italy and PSG of France. PSG went ahead when defender Skriniar put a nice header in, but Ralph Leao would get a beautiful overhead kick to equalize before Olivier Giroud score on what else? A beautiful header to give AC Milan in the win. The Wednesday matches were dandies as well. You had the biggest one going on in Denmark. There was definitely trouble rolling in Denmark. Copenhagen was hosting Manchester United in a thriller, and former Copenhagen striker, more drama to the game, Rasmus Holland would score 2 goals 28 minutes into the game. But then, not long before halftime, Marcus Rashford, he'd go to try to control the ball, but in the effort, he'd stomp the shit out of the Copenhagen defender's leg. They had to review it, but it'd be a straight red card. And this would instantly spark the Danish side. They get 2 goals, one via a penalty, and suddenly it's 2-2 at halftime. Man U would get a penalty of their own, and Bruno Fernandes would knock it into the net, giving them a lead again. But then you'd have Copenhagen tying it in the 83rd before, fittingly, a guy named Rooney, of all people, would score for Copenhagen, putting them up 4-3, giving them the dramatic win over Man U. What a game. Napoli and Union Berlin would draw. That was big for the German side, as they had lost 12 consecutive in all competitions before that. Real Sociedad took care of Benfica. Inter Milan skunked Salzburg. The help of a penalty late in that one. Bayern Munich held on to beat Turkish side Galatasaray. Arsenal shut out Sevilla. PSV shut out Lens. And Real Madrid shut out Braga. Then you jump to the English Premier League. Quick jump to last game Monday. It came after the podcast release. Just mention it quick because it was Tottenham and Chelsea, and it was more of a WWE match. You had Tottenham finishing with 9 players, Chelsea getting tons of late goals, and you get a Nicholas Jackson hat trick, and suddenly it's 4-1, Tottenham's first loss of the season. Not how they wanted to lose their first game. Nobody wants to lose a game. But how would they bounce back this match week as they were playing Wolves? Well, they'd score 3 minutes into the game. Johnson would get his first goal in the Tottenham club, and they'd be up 1-0 3 minutes in. And Tottenham led this whole game. They dominated. But then the 90th minute, only 3 minutes being on the pitch, substitute Sarabia would come up with an excellent first touch before putting it away. Tied at 1. And then what seemed like a chaotic stoppage time, Lamina would get a perfect pass from Sarabia and slide it in the net. 97th minute. What a comeback. Massive win for Wolves. 2 goals and stoppage time to win the game, while Tottenham gives up 2 goals, loses their second consecutive while being at the top of the league. Top of the league just like 10 days ago, and now with 2 losses. We'll see where they're at after this EPL segment. But it was pretty wild. You had Man U hosting Luton Town, hoping to bounce back from disappointment midweek, and they dominated possession all game. But despite saying that, they were equal on chances with Luton until a blast from Victor Lindelof put Man U ahead. The defender doesn't score a lot, but that was a big goal for Man U. And it didn't really instill a lot of confidence in fans going forward. But you know what? A win's a win. Take the 3 points, move on with it. We'll see what Eric Ten Hag does with this team. And then Arsenal also hosted a new promoted side, and they flexed a little more muscle than Man U did in their game. Arsenal would really take advantage of this one easy, winning 3-1. But Fabio Vieira would do something super dumb in that one, get a straight red in the 83rd minute. No business doing it. They're already up, but he'll miss some time now. Convincing win from Arsenal regardless. Jumping to another one that took place in the English capital, Crystal Palace was hosting Everton. Not even a minute into the game, Mikolenko would head one into the back of the net, give Everton the quick lead. But minutes later, Eze would go on a beautiful run before getting taken down. And Crystal Palace, Eze would step up, convert it, tie the game back up 5 minutes in. Early in the second half, Mikolenko would strike a beautiful one, but it hit the post, ricochet right to Decore, who tap it in. Everton's up 2-1 again. But then some terrible miscommunication between the defense and Jordan Pickford led to an equalizing goal. This one was in the 74th minute by Edward. But then in the 86th minute, Everton would go ahead for the third time. Idrissa Gueye would score the nice goal, secured a 3-2 win for Everton. Then Bournemouth was hosting a Newcastle team who had 11 players missing due to injury or suspension. Eddie Howe was hoping his depth would, help get the win, but Bournemouth had other ideas. 2 second-half goals by Dominic Solanke would be enough to give Bournemouth the win. Big win for them over Newcastle as they continue to struggle with all those players missing I alluded to. Aston Villa would host Fulham, and both were looking to avenge losing their last Premier match. Difficult Villa cross was deflected, and Robinson was credited with an own goal. Not ideal. And then the 42nd minute, Aston Villa captain John McGinn would shoot a beauty right into the net there to put Villa up even more. Ollie Watkins would get a tap up to go up 3-0. Then Raul Jimenez, he's been looking to score a bit for Fulham. He'd get a consolation goal, but they'd lose 3-1. Brighton were hosting Sheffield United and jumped to an early lead, but Brighton was dominating the entire possession, lots of shot. They just couldn't get that second past Fotheringham. And that would prove costly. Mahmoud Daoud would get a straight red card for stamping on the opponent in the 69th. It didn't look intentional, but, he still did it. And, that gave Sheffield United some life, and they'd put a dangerous one in the box, would be an own goal, game tied up, and that's how it would end. Huge result for Sheffield United because that point gets them out of the last place in the division. They're one ahead of Burnley now. But more disappointment for Brighton. They haven't won a Premier League game since September 24th when they beat Bournemouth. So they're struggling. West Ham hosted Nottingham Forest, and it was a pretty exciting bout. Lucas Paqueta put my Hammers up ahead 3 minutes in, looking good. Then just before halftime, Forest would equalize through Awanihi. He'd kill the vibe in the stadium a bit. Anthony Alanga would score in the 63rd and rip his shirt off and just destroy it, which seemed a little ridiculous since West Ham would equalize not even 2 minutes later. And then Thomas Souček, the Czech man, he'd finally get his goal. He could have had 3 on the evening. Finally got one the 88th minute, holding on to a win against Nottingham Forest. Bubbles were filling the sky, ending a 3-game losing streak for the Hammers. So that was much needed. Then you had Liverpool hosting Brentford. That was a one-sided affair. Mo Salah would get 2 goals in this one. Diego Jota would get one. Pretty easy 3-0 victory for Liverpool. In the last game of the match week, you had Premier League champions last year, and then you had cash cow Chelsea. What a game. I'm not going to lie. I originally missed the first 70 minutes because NFL was on. I'm battling COVID. You're not really watching everything. But, we have the power of the internet, so you can go back and check things if you're sick and missing shit. So it was pretty exciting to see. Erling Haaland would put the team ahead. Then old man Thiago Silva at 39. We had Pepe scoring earlier. Now we got Thiago Silva scoring at 39, 4 minutes later to tie it up. Then you had Raheem Sterling, former Manchester City player, putting his new side, Chelsea, up 2-1. For Akanji would tie it just before half. But guess who? Haaland would put Man City again ahead. This lead would last a little longer until Nicholas Jackson would get a rebound to tie it up. And then Rodri, all he does is score big goals, and he'd take one from outside for Man City. He'd get ricocheted off Thiago Silva's foot right into his own net. We all thought the game was over. And then Broha, the substitute, would come on for Chelsea, and he'd get taken down in the box by Ruben Diaz. And it would be total stoppage. Former Manchester City youngster Cole Palmer comes in and just calmly puts it away. Probably one of the best games of the Premier League season. So if you haven't watched the highlights of that one, check that out. So 12 games in the season. You got Manchester City sitting atop of the league. Second place and 1 point behind them are Liverpool and Arsenal. And those back-to-back losses have Tottenham dropping the fourth. Like I said, they were leading the league. Can't lose too often if you want to win the league. Going to Germany, there are some pretty big matches in the Bundesliga. Not a good, not a dramatic one to start as Mönchengladbach dismantled Wolfsburg, but the Bayern Munich game was pretty wild. They were up 2-0, 2 goals by Harry Kane. They looked like they had things going. But then in the span of 3 minutes, we were suddenly tied up. First, a lovely counter goal by Tim Kleindienst, and then seconds later, Nicholas Best would tie the game up off a dreadful giveaway by Bayern Munich. And this emotional roller coaster was going because it was just tied. And then Heidenheim had to make a huge save before Rafael Guerrero would tap it in, getting his first Bayern Munich goal. And Bayern would get a second one. So what looked like an easy victory suddenly turned into a scorefest 4-2 victory. But like I said before on the show, a win's a win. You just take it and move on. Another big matchup was Stuttgart and Dortmund, and Dortmund would go ahead early before Stuttgart equalized, but it definitely looked like Stuttgart was the more dangerous team. They'd eventually get taken down in the box when Dortmund keeper tried to get the ball and swing and a miss, took out the striker. Guirassy would step up, put it away from the spot, securing the big win for Stuttgart. Bayern Leverkusen continued their historic start by trouncing Union Berlin. Leipzig took a win over Freiburg, and every other result was a draw. So after 11 matches, Bayern Leverkusen still sit atop the league, Bayern Munich behind them, and Stuttgart, Leipzig, Dortmund following the Bavarian club in the table. And then you go to Italy, a few surprises there. AC Milan jumping out to a 2-0 lead over Lecce. No surprise there. The surprise came after in the 66th and 70th minute when Lecce would score 2 goals to tie the game up. The team, the bottom half of the table, was starting to get momentum. Then it's like, hey, AC Milan's looking like they're getting pressure on to get the win. Olivier Giroud thought the ref missed a call, and he let him know about it, getting a yellow card, which seemed to piss the Frenchman off more. He started to cuss in English, dropping F-bombs. He's like, you fuck. And the commentator's like, we apologize to our English listeners. But the ref didn't dig it. Olivier Giroud quickly got a second yellow, and he was tossed out of the game, which was huge because, like, seconds later, Lecce's Piccoli would catch the goalie out and score a beautiful strike. But then VAR was like, So they'd check it and be like, wait, you might have fouled this guy before you scored. No goal, 2-2 draw, but still a big result. Milan definitely expected to win that one. Another surprise was Empoli, a club near the relegation zone, beating last year's champions Napoli. A wonderful stoppage time winner by Victor Kovalenko gave them the win. Napoli fans didn't know what to think. Juventus took care of Cagliari. Inter Milan took care of Frosinone. Genoa beat Verona, and Fiorentina beat Bologna, while the rest of the clubs had draws. Inter Milan stood atop the Serie A, Juventus just behind them, and some slip-ups from AC Milan and Napoli have them a little further back in third and fourth. In Spain, the La Liga was looking good too. Girona kept the good times rolling, coming back to win 2-1 against Rayo Vallecano. Real Madrid crushed Valencia. Barcelona looked just awful in the first half. They were down 1-0 to Alaves. Crowd was booing them. Didn't look good for Barcelona, but Xavi must have whooped their ass at half or something because they came out looking refreshed. They come back to win 2-1. That looked more like Barcelona. Real Sociedad beat Almeria. Atletico beat at Villarreal. They each won 3-1 in those. Can't believe I'm saying this, but 13 matches in, Girona, they lead the La Liga. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid behind our leaders, Girona. Craziness in Spain. Going to France, Kylian Mbappe would get a hat trick and a real easy win over Reims. Clement Foot picked up a big win in what could be a potential relegation battle down the road against Lorient. Le Havre almost shocked the world when this newly promoted club would get a stoppage time penalty against Monaco. They're the oldest team in France. They had their substitute Grandsir to the spot. There was a lot of time in between the call and the shot, and I don't know if the pressure got to him, but there was a whimper in that kick. It was easily saved. All that build up for nothing. It's still a historic draw for the club, but they had a win in their eyes. But Metz beat Nantes, Lens beat Marseille, and popped the champagne for Lyon, Olympic Lyon. They finally got their win. Rennes went down to 10 men 5 minutes into the game, so they had a lot of time with this advantage, but it wouldn't be till the 67th minute when Jake O'Brien would score and end the 10-game league winless streak to start the season. Wow, I still can't believe they went that long, but hey, they won. It's all about winning eventually. PSG lead the Liga. Nice 1 point behind them. Monaco and Lille just behind them. North America here, we had the NWSL final, the Reign and the Gotham taking each other on. You had Megan Rapinoe and Ali Krager, their last games professionally. Rapinoe was injured minutes into the game in Achilles, kind of an Aaron Rodgers appearance, and she had to leave. Lynn Williams would put Gotham FC ahead in the 24th, and that would only last 5 minutes before Rose Laval would tie it up. Tied at 1 just before halftime, a corner would lead to the World Cup winning Spanish player Esther Gonzalez putting Gotham ahead 2-1. They'd hold on, they'd win it. Gotham FC are your National Women's Soccer League champions. So congrats to them. Probably not the way Megan Rapinoe wanted to go out, but hey, sports, you don't always get to decide how you go out. MLS playoffs had their we have now the semifinals set. It's been a very confusing playoff to find. They're stretching out games, but we do have a semifinals set, and these are single game eliminations, so much more exciting. You have the Houston Dynamo and Sporting KC, Seattle Sounders and LAFC in the West. In the East, you have Orlando City versus Columbus and Cincinnati versus Philadelphia. And a quick shout out to Wrexham in League Two. They had a big win over Gillingham with goals by Ollie Palmer and Ben Tozer. Going to the NHL, first team I need to talk about the Oilers. Yikes. Struggling goaltender Jack Campbell was sent to assignment in the NHL with the Bakersfield Condors, and it didn't exactly go the way he wanted his first game against the Abbotsford Canucks. Giving up 4 goals in that one. The Oilers broke a 4-game losing streak on Sunday when they beat the Kraken, but the damage was already done. After 3-9-1 record, Jay Woodcroft was fired, as well as assistant coach Dave Manson. Chris, don't call me Chuck, Knobloch took over as coach, moving up from the New York Rangers AHL affiliate Hartford. His assistant will be a familiar face in Edmonton, Paul Coffey, the Hall of Famer. And they did pretty good. The Oilers beat the Islanders on the coach's debut, so good start for them. Hopefully this will help them going forward. And from a struggling team to some good-looking ones, the Golden Knights, Dallas Stars, and the surprising still, Vancouver Canucks. It kind of looked like the cream of the crop of the West. Avalanche took a beating from the Blues and a loss to the Kraken, but they kind of avenged that with their win over the Kraken recently. Chicago Blackhawks aren't winning a tons of games, but number 1 overall pick, Connor Bedard's starting to look like everyone's hyping him up to be against the Lightning. He became the youngest player since 1944 to have a 4-point game, the 3rd youngest ever. That's pretty wild. Out east, you get the Bruins and Rangers looking like the cream of the crop, Macho Man would say. But just below them, like I've said, it's a tight group. So much parity in the East. It looks like so many teams could go on a run and distance themselves or go on a slump and you find yourselves behind it. It's pretty wild. The Penguins and Panthers have a nice little streaks to turn things around, but like I said, out east, it could all change in a week. Patterson for the Canucks is still leading the league in points at 25. Austin Matthews of the Leafs leading the league at 13. And Boston Bruins goalie Jeremy Swayman leading the league in goals against average and save percentage. Good on him. And more news in hockey. You had the Hockey Hall of Fame ceremony. Some really good goaltenders getting inducted. 2 highlighted in episode 30 of this podcast. Henrik Lundqvist and Mike Vernon. Might have to go back and change some info on them. Another goaltender, Tom Barrasso, inducted as well. Center Pierre Turgeon. Canadian hockey legend Caroline Ouellette gets the nod from the female side. And then you had coaches Pierre Lacroix and Ken Hitchcock going in. So pretty good 2023 class. Congratulations to them. Going from the rink to the college football, you had some pretty crazy games. The biggest story was obviously how the Big Ten came down on Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh, banning him from sidelines for the remainder of the season. Like, he can do stuff during the week, just not on game day on the sideline. So it's this all stems from the sign stealing controversy, and it's pretty wild how the conference came down on this. One of my favorite people to listen to, Bomani Jones, summed it up really nicely when I was listening to him, saying, how can a conference come down so hard on Michigan for sign stealing? But you had guys literally getting slapped in the face with dicks at Northwestern as part of that hazing thing. They did not come down quite as hard on them as they are here. So it shows you better not sign steal. You can whip people in the face with your dick, but you better not be stealing their signs. But you know what? Michigan, with all this on them, they had a tough game against Penn State, and they take the big win. Interim coach Sharon Moore, he spoke about his love for Jim Harbaugh. Like, everybody, this extra motivation definitely helped. Like, they destroyed him. The score doesn't look that bad, but this was a physical game they owned. James Franklin was getting booed leaving the field. The Penn State coach is now 1-12 against top 5 opponents. So, yikes. Washington won a close one against Pac-12 rival Utah, one of the biggest game of the week. Michael Penix continuing to look like a Heisman winner potentially for the Huskies. Then you had some big SEC games, Alabama beating down on Kentucky, Missouri spanking Tennessee, LSU embarrassing Florida, and Georgia crushing Ole Miss. Florida State kept their perfect season line with a tight one over rivals, the University of Miami. Sticking in the ACC, UNC, North Carolina won a 2-point thriller over Duke. And yeah, I'm talking football, not basketball yet. And Arizona beat Dion's Colorado with a last-second field goal. As well in the Pac-12, there you had Caleb Williams and Bo Nix, two great quarterbacks going at it, and Oregon would take the victory in that one. Probably the biggest shock of the weekend, number 24, Oklahoma State, coming fresh off a win over Oklahoma. They lose to unranked UCF, University of Central Florida, beaten 45-3. Yikes. My picks from last week were mostly right. The only ones I got wrong were pretty bad, though. I had Tennessee and Florida winning, not getting their asses kicked. So I was a little wrong on that one. The season's getting right near the end here, and we got some pretty big games next week coming up. You got Louisville, Miami, Utah, Arizona, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, Clemson, Colorado, Washington State. And out of those games, I'm going to go with the Utah, Georgia, North Carolina, and Colorado. The last mention of college football in this episode, Jimbo Fisher getting fired from Texas A&M after a 6-4 start to the season. What's big on this is how much they will owe Jimbo Fisher to no longer coach. You're looking at about $77.6 million, the most ever to get a coach out of there, smashing the mark at $21.4 Auburn had to pay Gus Malzahn. Sticking with college, basketball's back. Big starts of the season in Duke's world. Former North Carolina player Caleb Love transferred to Arizona and came in the Duke and stunned the number 2 team, 78-73. Caleb Love loves going into that arena and beating Duke. Kansas, Purdue, Marquette, UNC, Houston, and Gonzaga have all looked good in their starts. Defending champs, UConn haven't been tested too much yet. Villanova was upset by Ivy League's Penn, though, so that's pretty big. There's so much parity in college basketball. I love it. Women's side has been probably even crazier. You had last year's champs, this season's number 1, LSU, losing their opener to the University of Colorado. This is with Van Lith being on that team now. Kim Mulkey was not happy about it, saying this is unacceptable for LSU, which would go on to thump their next opponents, not ranked as high nearly, quite easily. And the number 2 team in the nation, Connecticut, they're getting Paige Beckers back. They were stunned by NC State, who beat them 92-81. So it's not every day you have number 1 and number 2 teams in the country losing this early in the season. But that's parity in women's basketball. I love it. Iowa, love watching Iowa and Caitlin Clark. She became the all-time leading scorer in Iowa in their win over Northern Iowa. And South Carolina beat Maryland, Stanford beat Indiana, and Colorado keeping their good start going after beating Oklahoma State. So lots to see in college basketball. Not doing NBA because, as you know, so much in this podcast already. The NBA's got its own thing. People are digging it. Check it out on YouTube or Spotify, those NBA specials. For basketball, the UFC, you had UFC 295 going down at Madison Square Garden in New York. The Englishman, Tom Aspinall, would only need 69 seconds to win the match against Sergey Pavlovich. You catch him, knock him down before striking him with those punches in the face while he's on the ground. Ref called it. Big win for Aspinall. He's the current UFC interim heavyweight champ. We have the light heavyweight title on the line. Yuri Prochaska versus Alex Pereira. Deep into the second round, Pereira would catch Yuri with a big strike, knocking him down to his knees before hitting him with elbows, putting him on his back. Pereira would jump on top, start hitting him, and then the ref called the fight. And I could see how initially, but I don't think it was done there. And I looked online to see if maybe I was seeing things, but a lot of people seem to disagree with how Mark Goddard called that fight and saying he does this too often. I mean, you can debate it. Regardless, Pereira's your light heavyweight champion, so congrats to him. I know baseball seems light years away, but there's been some new managers that have been picked up. We got to mention the New York Mets hired Carlos Mendoza to be their new manager. He spent the past 15 seasons across the city with the Yankees. The Chicago Cubs went in their division to sign Craig Counsell away from the Brewers. He managed that club the last 9 seasons, and it didn't come cheap, as Counsell is now the highest paid manager in baseball at $8 million a year. The Brewers owner, Mark Antancio, took it quite well, saying, "We lost Craig, but I've reflected on this. Craig has lost us, and he's lost our community." So I think he's taken it rather well. Los Angeles Angels have hired Ron Washington, 71-year-old, last managed the Rangers back in 2014, but he's been part of the Atlanta Braves staff the last 6 seasons. Last manager update: Houston Astros hiring Joe Espada. He's the bench coach, and he'll be moving up to manager, to replace Dusty Baker, who retired. And then we had some Rookie of the Year announcements, and no real surprises. Baltimore Orioles, Gunnar Henderson won it in the AL. No doubt who else would take it there. Arizona Diamondbacks, Corbin Carroll, him and that sweet mustache, made it all the way to the World Series, and he deserved it as well. Manager of the Year, MVP, and Cy Youngs will be coming out later this week, so we'll highlight those next episode. And I have to end with CFL here. Cody Fajardo and the Montreal Alouettes went to Toronto and shocked the Argos. Montreal defense picking up Chad Kelly 4 different times. They advanced to the Grey Cup to take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Winnipeg easily took care of BC to advance to their fourth straight Grey Cup. The 2021 was canceled due to COVID, which I am now dealing with. But anyway, the Bombers lost in last year's game against the Argos, so they'll be looking to avenge some ghosts of Grey Cup past. Zach Collaros, man, he's just all he does is get the Grey Cups lately. So at least the Riders can say our 2 former quarterbacks are playing in the Grey Cup. I mean, that's probably not a good thing you want to be saying, but here we are. So that jumps to the short. And for this episode's getting long for my voice, so for this inspiration, why not COVID? I look no further than that damn COVID test and that stupid lines, which had taken me away from work and doing my podcast when I'm supposed to. But anyway, this is weird days for everyone to jamming shit into your noses. And first time I tested positive, though. Granted, it's karma. Last week I was bragging to a coworker I haven't missed any work lately, and weird flex on how I've never had COVID. So karma just gave me a stone cold stunner. But yeah, that's what it is, eh? That's the world we're in. Obviously, I mentioned my ACL surgery on this show and how I couldn't get put out because the COVID was prevalent. So they had to give me the needle in the spine. And then I had to small talk with the anesthesiast as the surgeon and his cronies beat the hell out of my knee as I'm shaking as they're hitting it because they had to strike something into the knee. I don't know. Whenever I act that, I always feel it's like someone taking down a vampire by hitting the stake. And I know that's not how they were getting my knee together, but that's what it looked and felt like. They even asked me if I wanted to watch it, or do you want a curtain? I'm like, put that curtain up, sir. But yeah, and before that surgery, they're like, well, we're doing COVID tests, and we have a new system. We'd like to test it, so we need 2 samples of you. So as they pin cushion my nose to test this, like, I'm not alone in it. Healthcare workers had to get pin cushioned way more than I, so I shouldn't bitch or anything, but it was weird times with COVID, like I said, we became nasal pin cushions. You watch hand sanitizer become a popular cologne. You'd watch the community become toiletry hoarders. It was a very weird time, but we've also lost people to COVID. I've known people that have. My cousin Kevin, one of the greatest West Ham fans around, he lost his life before there were vaccines. Like, we can't just say this isn't a real thing here, guys, but that's a whole nother debate. And talking about, like, we need to just love and be friendly regardless of people if they have illnesses and shit. But this is becoming something way bigger now. I gotta say it. I didn't think I'd have to. It's gone this far, but can we have a ceasefire here? This is getting out of control. Palestinian people are getting wiped off the earth, and Canada and the US don't really give 2 fucks, right? They're buddying up with their friend while he's committing terrible crimes. You've seen it. So it happens in a lot of places, right? Danny Masterson goes to jail. He gets sentences for rape trial. You have Ashton Kutcher writing letters of recommendation. You know your boy fucked up, but you're still like, no, I got his back. I got his back. That's basically what's happening right now. They're using the fog of war with Hamas to just destroy innocent people, and they're eradicating these people from the world. I'll give shout outs to people like lastly Lisa Haley. I know people online sharing shit like this, sharing a lot of it, trying to get it out there because it seems like no one's really caring. And I'm not saying like need to retaliate and hurt people or anything. This isn't anti-Semitic in any way, but really just what is going on here? Just killing innocent people. What can we do though? Like, maybe go to Starbucks a little less, try to boycott a company that's fully supporting them, have these tough discussions with friends and family to be like, what is happening here? Why does the Western world not care that these group of people are being removed? These aren't terrorist people are being killed right now. These are all innocent people. And we just celebrated Remembrance Day, a day honoring those that sacrificed themselves for everything we have today. We're having all these honors and celebrations, and we're saying this, but we're literally just turning away from a genocide happening. It's very, very hypocritical to me. So in 20 years, we're going to look back and be like, man, I wish I said or did something. I can't believe no one did anything. Well, here's me saying something. Come on, people, say something, do something, try something. Let's just not watch innocent people die. I can only imagine. Oh, man. But you know what? This podcast took a little bit of that had to be said. Thanks for coming out and sticking along. I'm sounding like Marge Bouvier by the end of this, but yeah, I'll be having some tea or something. Thanks for coming out, guys. Episode 36 of the books. The voice did hold up. Remember, tune into that NBA show that I've been repping here. Getting some pretty good rap from people that have been watching, so thank you for that. I appreciate the feedback. Everyone else, take care. Do your tests. Stay healthy. It's 6 season. Red City out.